Yeah, I think this idea of teachers documenting their own learning is actually really, really exciting. Um, so when I was thinking about this question, kind of anticipating for this meeting, I was thinking, the first thing that always comes to my mind when I think about teachers or learning in general, I guess, is this idea of process. So I think the documentation could really highlight that process that you're going through as you're coming to know something. I
Mhm.
guess with teachers particularly, I would say, like be very specific about what you're wanting to learn, right? Like that you have a certain goal or a certain question in mind before you start, and then document your process of getting to know this. The books you're reading, the articles that you bump into, the interviews that you may do, a workshop that you're going to. So document that process, document your reflections, your questions. And I guess, with everything in that process, there will be key moments of sort of breakthrough, where ideas become more apparent, more clear. You may try things in your classroom, so that back and forth, that process will finally, in that art, you get to a new point of understanding. So when I talk about this, I guess what comes in my mind also is this idea of, I just came back from a trip to Reggio Emilia, and they talked about learning really as constructing meaning and developing maps of meaning. And I think that that's just so beautiful. Hey, so as we're documenting this process, really kind of keep on looking for moments of tension, moments of insight, ways that your prior knowledge is either confirmed, challenged, expanded, so that you're so aware of your own map of meaning and the way that your learning is being expanded, so to say. Okay, well, I've thrown quite a bit at you now. Like, I think I should stop now and see what you're thinking, Jessica, about this
Yeah,
process and looking for the tensions and ways that we're expanding our maps of meaning.
yeah. As you're speaking, I think of two things. I think about the educator Alison Clark, early years educator, researcher. Forgive me, I'm not sure where she's from, but I was doing some recent reading of hers, and I love her language around how do we slow down the transaction in education because it's so quick. And so I think, just like thinking routines, right? Of course, the work of Mark Church and Ron Richard, right? It helps us slow down the learning in that way. The documentation process really helps us slow down that transaction. And just like you said, in regards to those maps of meaning, helps us tease out that tension and that insight and those connection pieces as well. And so it's very easy for us to get really caught up in all the things that are thrown at us, all of our either littles or bigs or whoever it is that we're facilitating some learning of, and how might we retrain our brains to have some more intention around valuing slow and kind of taking our time, and how it's not more that's going to give us more, but how might less really give us more of what we want. So I think about Allison. I think about also the design cycle and the design process. My brother is actually he works for Instagram, and when I started writing my publication and I was kind of sharing some of my thinking, he's like, "Can I show you something?" I said, "Sure." So he showed me this online resource called Figma, and it's basically just a blank space and page. And he was talking about the creative process in design. It starts with basically this own documentation of things that are grabbing them, of course, a big concept or idea that they're trying to unpack and to design a resource toward, but how this lives outside of the world of education, and it drives innovation and creation outside of education. And why might not this be something that we think about within our context? And so the documentation is huge, and how we maneuver and manipulate and change things is something that I have just been so passionate about, and I'm really wanting to continue to reground and re-anchor teachers in that practice as learners too.
Yeah, I love that what you said about that idea of slowing down, because it really is like I think what documentation does, it becomes this really deep metacognitive process. Hey, we're so aware of our own learning process and where we're at. So that slowing down, that zooming in really helps us then to be aware of where our theories are and ways that perhaps our theories, our constructs, our ideas, our maps of meaning are either, being challenged, expanded, transformed, like, and that's learning, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how are we okay with just sitting in it for a little bit longer? And so the documentation kind of forces us to do so. I'm actually currently on a site right now, and we were talking about the provocation tug of war. And a teacher was really challenged by the idea of her learners not agreeing or disagreeing with the statement that we were using for the tug of war. She's like, well, how do I know if my learners know? And they said, well, is it okay that we're maybe not a yes or a no, but that we dig deeper and ask more questions to see and unpack their thinking? And she's like, yes, but I don't know how to do that. So we were talking about some ways to kind of brainstorm and settle into some of that documentation piece too.
Yeah, it's that really being comfortable with being uncomfortable and sitting with the tension and with the grappling. And I think again, documentation really allows for that because your questions, your tensions, the things that you don't know yet, become more apparent.